In northern England, high above the valley of the River Gornless to its north, and the village of Cockfield to its south, lies a wind-swept plateau, known as Cockfield Fell. At first glance, it looks like nothing more than open moorland, rough grass, scattered stone, and wide horizons. But as you look closer, the ground begins to change. Strange ridges rise where they shouldn't. Vast scars cut across the earth. Mounds lie scattered, silent, their purpose unclear. Yet these shapes hold secrets. Unbeknown to many, beneath the surface lies a story carved by fire, sweat, and centuries of human ambition. And it's not just a story about long-gone people. It's about our region, our families, and perhaps even our ancestors. Cockfield Fell is England's largest scheduled ancient monument, a place where geology, industry, and the lives of ordinary people, including figures whose influence reached far beyond the valley, intersect in ways few ever pause to imagine. This is Rails and Revolutions, the history that built us, the forces that shaped us. This fell has a human history stretching back over 2,000 years and a geological history stretching back much further. So before we have a tour of the remaining features, let's have a brief history lesson. The story of Cockfield Fell begins around 310 million years ago. The Carboniferous coal measures found beneath the fell tell of swamps, shifting rivers, and forests long vanished. During the last ice age, glaciers and ice sheets scoured the landscape, leaving behind deposits of boulder clay, sand, and gravel. These glacial deposits, layered over the ancient coal, shaped the ridges and hollows we see today, creating a terrain that will much later fuel the industrial fire of the northeast. The ridges and hollows we see when we walk across the fell aren't just landforms. They're the backdrop of our own walks, our dog runs, the places kids play. Every step we take today follows a path first carved by ice, then reshaped by human hands. Yet long before the age of coal, people settled here. On the fell lie the remains of an Iron Age settlement, a cluster of earthworks that once formed roundhouses, enclosures, and defensive banks. These ancient marks remind us that Cockfield Fell was already a centre of life and activity over 2,000 years ago. When we stand here, we're connected to those people in a quiet but powerful way. They too gathered around fires, raised families, looked out over the same horizon. The fell has never been an empty land. It has always been a stage where generation after generation, including us, leaves its traces. By the early 14th century, Cockfield Fell was no longer untouched. In 1303, the name Henry Vavasour appears in the records, Sheriff of Durham, acting under the power of the Prince Bishops. He granted one of the first licenses to dig coal here, marking the beginning of a long industrial saga. Even 7 centuries ago, people recognised the value of the coal beneath the soil. Fuel for hearths, for smithies, perhaps even for lime burning. Mining was a privilege overseen by the bishop's officers, who ensured the land was not overexploited. The operations themselves were simple but demanding. Shallow bowl pits dotted the landscape, hand-dug depressions following the seams of coal. Once a pit was exhausted or unsafe, it was abandoned and another dug nearby. Wooden timbers and crude stone supports kept tunnels from collapsing. Pack horses transported the coal to nearby villages. Families worked side by side, their lives and labours intertwined with the rhythms of the land. When we pause at these hollows, we're not just looking at history, we're standing in the footprints of those who built the foundations of our world. Here, on a quiet slope of Cockfield Fell, I stand roughly on the site where over 7 centuries ago, miners first began to extract coal under the watch of Henry Vavasour, at what may have been one of the earliest inland collieries in England. The earth beneath my feet holds the faint echoes of hands and feet that once laboured tirelessly, shaping both the land and their own lives. It is humbling to think of those who dug here with nothing more than simple tools, their work guided by instinct, courage and necessity. These were the first sparks of an industry that would later come to dominate this fell and the lives of its people.
For centuries, Cockfield Fell remained a quiet landscape, its early mine workings slowly softening back into the earth. Yet the knowledge that coal could be worked here never disappeared. By the time Britain's hunger for fuel grew insatiable in the 18th and 19th centuries, these ancient beginnings set the stage for something far greater. The Fell became part of a vast industrial boom that reshaped not only the land, but also the lives of the people who lived and worked here. And now we shall explore the remains of that industry, still scattered across the fell in ridges, shafts and ruins. Silent witnesses to the rise and fall of a coalfield that changed everything.
Our journey begins in the heart of the village at St Mary's Church. Built in the 12th century, it stood as a constant presence through centuries of change. As miners walked the paths to and from the pits, the church was their marker on the horizon, a place of baptisms, marriages, burials and weekly worship, binding together a community whose lives were shaped by coal. Generations of families passed through these doors. Maybe your own grandparents or their parents before them walked this same path past the church on their way to the pits. And whether we have direct family ties here or not, these stories shape the communities we live in today.
1869, the fell was declared a regulated pasture, managed by fell reeves who gave local stockholders the right to graze their animals in return for a yearly rent. From here, the fell unfolds. A vast landscape of nearly 250 hectares, beneath which lies evidence of activity stretching from prehistoric times to the height of the coal industry. Even as industry grew, the traditions of the land remained alive. Scattered across the fell are pigeon lofts. Each one a personal marker of leisure. To the right, the remains of a stone ventilation shaft break the skyline. The last traces of Gordon House Colliery, which finally closed in the 1960s. Just beside it lies a deep scar in the earth, once a whinstone quarry, part of the Great Cleveland Dyke, a vast sheet of volcanic rock formed around 58 million years ago, stretching from the Isle of Mull in Scotland to County Durham. Here, the stone provided material prized for road building, leaving the fell via railway to resurface roads across the north of England. Following the old track past Fell House, the landscape begins to reveal even greater relics of the industrial age. I begin to follow the line of an old wagonway. Its path is worn but still clear, cutting across the fell. But then something unexpected catches my eye. Low stone retaining walls, half buried in grass and thyme. They rise in sections, rough but deliberate, holding back the earth. This section was once a shallow tunnel, now re-exposed to the light. From here, as I walk down the valley, magnificent remains of a vast viaduct appear, Land's Viaduct.
Built in 1862 by Thomas Bouch, the engineer later known for the ill-fated Tay Bridge. Originally built for a single track, it was later widened to two in 1905, serving coal trains and passenger traffic alike. Its decline came with the closure of the collieries in the 1960s. Attempts were made to dismantle it, but the bridge proved too resilient to their attempts to demolish, and the costs of removal too great. Today, one column still stands. The other where it fell. Silent witnesses to an age when railways shaped the landscape. But they're not just ruins, they're reminders of journeys taken, of people moving coal, goods and dreams across the valley. And for some of you watching, maybe they're reminders of your own childhood, climbing these arches or hearing your parents' stories of the last trains that crossed here. These structures don't just belong to history, they belong to all of us. On the other side of the river was no ordinary railway. Built in 1830 as a horse-drawn wagonway, the Hagalese line was the Gornless Valley's first railway, designed to carry coal from the fell to distant markets. Steam replaced horses in 1856, linking local collieries with ironworks and towns across the north-east.
Along its course, the remains of Beehive coke ovens, brick structures carefully constructed to burn coal into coke, still lie hidden in the undergrowth. These ovens powered engines, furnaces, and the growing industrial landscape beyond the fell, turning raw coal into fuel for progress. A short while later, we come to Skew Bridge. Built in 1830 by James Wilson of Pontefract. Set at a daring angle of 27 degrees, it was amongst the first of its kind in Britain, proving that engineering on Fell was as bold as anywhere in the country.
Before the full age of the railways, there was an experiment, a bold idea tried right here on Cockfield Fell. In 1825, just before the Stockton and Darlington Railway opened, engineers cut a water-filled cutting, a kind of test canal, to see where the coal could be floated across the fell rather than hauled across it. Barges were launched, hopes were high, but the canal quickly proved impractical. Water leaked, the ground was still unstable, and the costs were enormous. The dream of a waterway across the fell was abandoned almost as soon as it began. Yet even in failure, it tells us something. People here were never afraid to experiment, to push boundaries, to imagine new ways of moving coal and building industry. For me, that's one of the most exciting parts of this landscape. It reminds us that progress wasn't inevitable. It was tested, debated and shaped by people willing to try, even when success wasn't certain. And perhaps some of you watching this had family who worked these lines, or heard stories of the canal that never was. If you do, share them, because those fragments of memory keep the story alive. Not far up the fell, we meet the course of another line. The Bishop Auckland to Barnard Castle Railway opened in 1862. Here, passenger trains joined coal wagons, carrying people and goods across the valley. For a century, the line gave life to the community until the last train ran in 1962. Its earthworks and embankments, still etched into the land, remind us how the Fell was once a crossroads of industry and movement. Everywhere across Cockfield Fell lie the scars of industry. Bow pits, spoil heaps, tramway routes and quarry cuttings mark centuries of labour. Mining here began in the 14th century, when seams lay close enough to the surface to be dug by hand. Generations of families followed, carving coal from beneath the soil, leaving behind a pitted and restless landscape. What today looks like rugged moorland was once a hive of noise, smoke and sweat, an open-air workshop for the Industrial Revolution. The people of Cockfield forged more than coal. They built communities. The parish church of St Mary's bore witness to their lives, births, marriages, deaths and weekly worship.
Among them were extraordinary figures. George Dixon, the coal mine owner who first experimented with coal gas for illumination, bringing light to homes and streets, and Jeremiah Dixon, the surveyor and astronomer whose work would define the Mason-Dixon line in America. First drawn to settle a colonial boundary dispute, it later came to symbolize a divide between North and South, freedom and slavery. To think that a line so charged with meaning was measured by a man from this quiet fell is extraordinary. Even in this remote corner, the world beyond was never far away. Their ambition, ingenuity and courage rippled through the land, woven into the same fabric as the collieries, quarries and railways they relied upon.
The last mines of Cockfield Fell closed in 1962. Industry moved on, and much of the hard-won infrastructure fell silent. Yet the imprint of human labour remains, in ruined buildings, scattered tramways, and the patterns etched into the moor. Today, walkers follow the heritage trail, tracing the story of iron, stone and coal, reflecting on lives both extraordinary and ordinary. And if you've ever walked here yourself, you'll know that feeling, the quiet mix of peace and pride. Because even in decline, the Fell gives us something, a sense of place, of connection, of belonging to a story bigger than ourselves.
Cockfield Fell endures, a monument to resilience, ambition and the relentless passage of time. Here, history isn't just recorded in books, it's etched into the land itself. Waiting for those willing to look closely, to listen and to remember.
If you believe these stories matter, the ones held in steel, in stone, in silence, let's keep them alive together. Share this with someone who's walked these paths or whose family has ties to this land. Leave your memories in the comments, because your voices are part of this history too. Subscribe if you'd like to keep exploring these places with us, because heritage isn't just about preserving the past, it's about how we carry it forward. And if there's a bridge, a street, or a forgotten corner of the Northeast you'd like us to uncover, please let us know in the comments.
The story of this region isn't over. It's still being written, one voice, one place, one memory at a time.